City of Stevens Point Personnel Committee meeting, recorded September 8, 2025.
There we go. Okay. It is 6:04. I'll call the City of Stevens Point Personnel Committee meeting to order. Manager Frosch, could we get a roll call, please?
Kneebone?
Here.
Broderick?
Here.
Boozy?
Here.
Guthrie?
Here.
Steinmetz?
Here.
So we have a quorum. Second item on the agenda is a request to amend Administrative Policy 3.01, Standard Benefits. Manager Frosch, would you elaborate?
Exactly. On June 16th, Common Council approved the lifelong bus passes to employees retiring within a minimum of 20 years of service upon request. So I'm asking to add the language below. Employees who retired with the minimum of 20 years of service will receive lifetime bus passes upon request to Standard Policy 3.01.
Thank you. Any questions or a motion?
I'll move to approve. I'll take a second.
Okay, so motion by Broderick, second by Guthrie. Comments or questions from the audience or online? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. Those in favor would be aye. Aye. Opposed would be no. Okay, hearing none, that passes. Item 3, request to amend Administrative Policy 2.06, Promotion and Transfers. Manager Frosch, again.
Thank you. In reviewing policies, it was identified that there's a paragraph, assistant chiefs in the police and fire departments shall start at a minimum of step 3. The Police and Fire Commission may also request a higher starting step. Such request shall go to the Personnel Committee. We found that was due to wage compression issues in the past. I reached out to Baker Tilly, who is our analysis on wage, and they identified there are no wage compression issues since our 2023 pay plan. So we request to remove that language in the Promotions and Transfer Policy 2.06.
Thank you. Comments or a motion?
Move approval.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Guthrie, second by Broderick. Comments, questions?
I just had a couple questions. One, wage compression. What is that?
It's when one particular group, let's just say lieutenant, PD, and then another position above it, there's a wage compression so that it doesn't stay in line with, it's not a standard, what I can say.
Yeah, if I can jump in. So some of the issues that we've had in the past have been where there's not enough of a difference between, say, a lieutenant in the police department and an assistant chief in the police department. So then what you'll have is you'll have a situation where the lieutenant doesn't even want to apply for the promotion to assistant chief because of that compression issue and because they're not getting, overtime as an assistant chief where they would as a lieutenant. So those are some of the issues that we've had in the past. In the fire department, you have the same sort of issues between the represented union folks and the management staff. So that's why you can't have them too close together, otherwise nobody wants to take a move up to management.
Got it. That makes sense. And I'm assuming that could be encountered kind of randomly. Is there sort of a way to put this clause in at some point? Do we see a need for it to come back, or that's something that just needs to be anticipated as far as?
When we look at the 2023, or when we looked at the 2023 pay plan, we reached out to the department heads to say what other concerns you may have, and that was addressed at that time. So going forward, we're always going to look at that, any wage compression issues going forward.
Okay. So a clause as needed, looking ahead type. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience online? All right, seeing no more questions, we'll call the question and go to a vote. Those in favor would be aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed would be no. Seeing none, motion carries. Get a little together here. Next item on the agenda is approval of a new contract for the FICA Alternative Plan, which applies to seasonal employees and crossing guards. I'm not sure if that's Manager Frosch or Director, Comptroller Treasurer Laddick.
Hey, well, I was the one who wrote the
Yep.
memo, so I think I can take this one. So basically, right now, we have a what's called a FICA alternative plan for our seasonal employees and crossing guards, and basically what that means is that rather than contributing FICA tax towards Social Security, we set up a separate retirement account for them. And right now, those accounts are making 1% interest, which is not competitive in today's market. So our current vendor has offered to increase that to 3.25%. However, what they're asking for in return is that we agree that we're not going to transfer those funds as a city for a period of 7 years, but the employees will still be able to take those funds out if they wish to, or roll them into an IRA or do other things with them. It's just as a city, we can't select another vendor and transfer those funds for a period of 7 years.
Questions or a motion?
Maybe a move approval to get the discussion started.
Okay. And got a motion by Guthrie, second by Steinmetz.
I have a few questions.
Go
The
ahead.
first will require Attorney Beveridge, if he's present, if he could please start making his way into the room. I wasn't aware that we could opt out of Social Security or other FICA taxes. What a cool thing if it's beneficial for our employees. And I appreciate the explanation written about the 35 years towards retirement and accrual and things like that. I want to understand the legal basis under which we are opting employees out of what I understood to be required federal taxes. I still do. I was trying to be long-winded to give Attorney Beveridge some time to approach.
I actually have some personal experience with this. The city of Dallas opted out of Social Security. So anybody that works for the city would get a pension if they stay 5 years to get vested. And that's all you get. So my 5 years with the city of Dallas, I get a small pension, but none of that time counted towards Social Security. So it's, for a full-time employee, it's kind of hard.
Hi, Attorney Beveridge. Did you hear my question?
Actually, Joel had just grabbed my attention about something else, so could you run through it again?
Sure. Under what legal premise can we opt out of FICA, including Social Security, for some of our employees?
I don't have a great answer to that off the top of my head.
I'm sorry. I emailed you last week when I saw this on the agenda and was hoping not to spring it on you. I apologize if you're feeling surprised.
No, I mean, like, I'm not aware of an ability for us to opt out of federal tax obligations, if that's...
That is the question, yes.
No, but whatever it is that Corey's talking about, he's certainly going to have better information about it than I'm going to. Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of an ability for us to just say, nope, we're not doing that. It's pretty universal.
Yeah, so I would say as a government, we do have an ability to opt out if we have a substitute retirement plan in place, which is why you've got the FICA alternative plan, where basically we're meeting some obligation by contributing or having the employees contribute the 7.5% on a pre-tax basis to the retirement accounts of these employees. So it was vetted when we initially established the plan. The other example of this is for our firefighters, actually. Our firefighters are also opted out of FICA, so they do not pay into Social Security, and instead they actually pay a higher rate for the Wisconsin retirement system, and then they get a higher benefit out of the Wisconsin retirement system. So basically they don't get the Social Security, but they get a higher pension.
So it's what I heard you say at the beginning, Director Laddick, is our being a government entity, a municipality, allows us to opt out of FICA if there is an alternative. Am I
Yes.
summarizing that
Yep.
correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And so then my follow-on question, thanks for coming in, I appreciate it.
By the way, Corey, just correct me if I'm wrong, but FICA also refers to things beyond just Social Security. I mean, it's also Medicare and Medicaid taxes for those as well, right?
It also includes Medicare. So basically, out of your 7.65% FICA contribution, 1.45% is Medicare, and then 6.2% is Social Security. We cannot opt out of the Medicare portion. So
That-
we
that
can
makes more
just-
sense.
We can just opt out of the 6.2% Social Security.
Okay.
Okay, and that's, I appreciate that clarifying question, because in the memo, I understood FICA being sort of used interchangeably with Social Security, and I was also wondering about those other tax implications. Okay, so we have standing to do this. My follow-up question is what we are considering moving to, clearly what we're doing right now is not ideal. What we are considering moving to, have we asked the employees if they would prefer Social Security over this lock at a higher percentage? Do we have reason to believe that it's better than Social Security? Again, I understand that a lot of our part-time employees might not have the 35-year plan of being a crossing guard, but before we vote on this, I just want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can by them, and I appreciate Director Kneebone's comments about making this universal decision for folks. It reduces their years in calculus of Social Security, which really does have long-term impacts and sometimes harmful impacts on employees. So I don't want to be casual about this, and I'll yield there.
Sure. So I did talk to Director Kramer about this because it affects his department primarily. He's got the most seasonal employees by far. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but the feedback that he gave me was that so far he hasn't had any complaints about the program.
I'm not sure that 15-year-old lifeguards would know to complain about it.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a fair point. So, but I guess I can tell you that Director Kramer is aware. He didn't,
We talked about it, and there was no concern with it. Most of them were college age.
Do you want to
Did he
go up to
if- just so people at home can hear. Thank you.
Dan discussed it with me, and we didn't have any concern with it. We've had zero complaints about it. I mean, we've had tons of college kids and older age people come through, and there's been no concerns.
Can anyone speak to whether the proposed plan in tonight's agenda does materially better for some of the temporary and short-term folks that we have, the seasonal folks that we have? Like, have we run the numbers and made it demonstrated, like the average employee or the majority of our employees do better with this plan than FICA?
That piece we have not done. It's difficult because I would need to know what the basically projected lifetime earnings of that person are and how many years they're going to be in the workforce and what they're going to be earning to run that kind of an analysis.
But we probably do know if it's 80% teenagers and 20% retirement age folks, right? We could look at that.
If I may.
Please.
If we assumed like just a standard distribution of people, could we say like 7 out of 10 people are going to end up better off under this new system? Is that kind of what?
Yeah, before we lock ourselves into something for 7 years and remove, so I started my first Social Security job when I was 14. So my years of service, like I'm thinking about kids like me, right, who start working at the pool and who are not gaining years of service and probably don't even know what that means. Like, I started that when I was 14 years old, and so my years of service in Social Security are more significant because arbitrarily my employer, right? That's not something I knew to complain about or argue about. So yes, before I vote in favor of this, especially because of the 7-year lock, I would want some sort of analysis of how this materially impacts the typical temporary, seasonal, or part-time employee that falls under this category, to make sure that we're actually doing them materially better than the Social Security option.
Hi, I would just like to bring up, most of them, when they're at that young of an age, Mark Christensen, Alder 1, District 1. For most of them, this isn't going to be one of their top 35 years. So by doing it in this alternative fashion, it's probably going to be more beneficial to them, because if your Social Security is only going to be based, so this would be in addition to what they would be getting in the FICA. So unless they were going to be able to retire it, yeah. If you're that fortunate enough to be, what would you be, 49? 35 when you started when you were 14? So yeah, so then it would be one of your top, if that's one of your top 35 years, Social Security is not going to be very helpful anyway. But anyway, I think that's part of the rationale behind it, because so many of them of those seasonal workers are young. It's probably not going to be one of their top 35, so it wouldn't really benefit them in the Social Security payout. That's my guess. It's a guess.
But it's a guess, and I respectfully would like to see more material sort of comparison before we lock ourselves into, and I'm monopolizing. I'd love to hear the rest of the committee's perspective.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I see you called out in the memo that currently these accounts are making 1% interest, which is not competitive.
Mm-hmm.
The vendor has agreed to raise it to 3.25. Is that competitive, or is it just closer? Like, what is considered competitive in that market?
And that's a 7-year lock on that.
Right.
Yeah, I would describe it as closer, but I think the issue that you have with the 3.25 as far as getting above that is that you have accounts that are very small. So I think, if we were talking about millions of dollars or even, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you could get a much better rate on that kind of money. I think the issue that you have is you have a lot of really small accounts, and which require the time to service those accounts and take care of everybody who has, potentially accounts with $500, $1,000 in them. And that's, I think, part of the issue in terms of getting a more competitive rate. Certainly the city can, we've got millions of dollars to invest. Usually when we're taking out a certificate of deposit, it's for around $3.5 million. So with that, we have negotiating power to say, hey, we need a better rate than 3.25.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the extra context there. I am personally comfortable enough moving forward tonight just on the basis that it seems very reasonable to assume more likely than not the average person benefiting from this type of account is benefiting more than they would under Social Security, based on Alder Christensen's comments there of that top 35 years of earnings. To me, I think that's a reasonable enough inference. I am comfortable proceeding if the committee members would like to.
Anybody else?
Yeah, no comment.
From the floor.
Sean Morrow, I'm the alder person for Area 11. We had this topic several years ago, and one of the things that was brought up was like, again, they brought up like the lifeguards and the part-time groundskeepers and so on, and like I remember a comment was made was like, when you're a lifeguard, they like just wanted the money. And again, it wasn't going to be, and we did bring up this wasn't going to be their top years, and most of them are just doing it for like 3 months out of the year, and so on. And that's why, I think the majority. Well, I thought the majority council had voted on this because I thought that we were doing that for some of our part-time employees. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but I know we did bring this up. Because they were part-time and they were only working for a season, like they were working on like the sledding hill or something like that, and it wasn't meant to be like their retirement account. This is just their part-time gig as they're in school, and at that part of their lives, even for the college kids, they needed the money. It wasn't about this is my retirement career that they were trying to do, and we were trying to get competitive wages, and that was a way for us to try to like bring up those wages a little bit so that we could get people to do the job, because at the time we couldn't get people to work. We had problems getting folks to work at the sled hill, being lifeguards, and doing various other things. So I think this would be a good thing if we were able to really do it. And again, as most of us remember, when we were like 16, 17 years old, not really thinking about retirement because we're going to be forever young, if you remember that. So if this is a way for us to try to keep some employees, to even get employees, because I know it's been hard for us to get lifeguards too. Because a lot of kids now are in sports, they don't really want to work. They don't really have time to work because they're more concentrated on their sports and so on and so forth. So, thank you very much.
My experience with this, as long as a municipality creates an alternative that is approved by, at the state level and the IRS, it's called a Section 218 agreement, and the plan has to basically be comparable to what they would get for Social Security. And this was everybody in the city of Dallas. We didn't have a choice. But they have a very good pension plan. And my pension, I did a lot better with my pension than had I had just Social Security, because the pension paid me more money once I retired. There was a time, I think, when I started working about at age 16, back in the Jurassic period, you didn't pay Social Security all year. After so many months, you didn't get it withheld from your paycheck anymore. So almost like a seasonal employee, only so many months of the year got included. It's different now, I'm sure, but that's the way it was way back when. So it seems to me that the folks that are in this alternative program will benefit more from the higher interest rates. That'll give them a little bit more money on their what's withheld from their paycheck before they're able to withdraw it. So I don't see a problem with it. Having worked in a system like this myself, it's worked for most, and the folks that didn't get vested in the retirement system had something like this that they could draw from. But I stayed long enough to get vested in the system, and now I have a lifetime pension that is not bad. It's not great, but it helps, and it gives me a little more money than I would have just on straight Social Security for the same amount of time. So in that regard, I was better off. And I had enough Social Security from other jobs that I get both. But so I don't think it's a bad deal. I think as long as the 7-year commitment, if you're comfortable with that as our comptroller treasurer, I think it benefits the folks that are in this program to have a little bit higher rate of return on their investment. So, go ahead.
How much do you think that 7-year lockup is worth? Like, if we didn't agree to it, would they offer 2.75 or 3? Or is the balance in these accounts so low that we wouldn't look at a new vendor in the next 7 years anyways?
You know, it's hard to speculate on what they would offer, if I say, we can't do the 7 years, what else can you do for us? I'm not sure what their counter to that would be.
Okay.
So, but I will say, you know, one of the challenges is that you don't have a lot of vendors that work in this space. So, because it's just so unique. So, I mean, we can certainly look at, you know, other options and what else is out there. But, you know, as far as even locating other vendors might be even a challenge.
Okay.
And it does take a little bit less out of a seasonal paycheck, which is going to be lower than a full-time employee, which helps them in the short term as well. And it gives them a little something that's been set aside that's gaining some interest, which sometimes is more than Social Security's cost of living adjustments. So, any other questions or discussion? Questions from anyone here or online? I'm not sure if we have anybody online anymore.
I have one last question. Need to check my understanding. So right now, we do have this FICA exemption. My assumption is that a lot of these employees, especially in the part-time seasonal lifeguard category, like they're probably early withdrawing these funds anyway when they leave the city, right? That would no longer be available to them if we were under the Social Security full FICA model in the same way.
Well, correct. So basically, right now, a lot of them are able to withdraw, and they're still able to withdraw, even with that 7-year commitment. That 7-year commitment is just that the city isn't going to transfer those funds to another vendor. So, you know, to be clear, it's not locking the employees into keeping that money with this vendor for 7 years. Once these employees leave employment, they're able to take that money out. But yes, if we switched from this and transferred over to making them basically Social Security eligible, or where they're paying into Social Security, then they wouldn't have that extra little bit of money that they can take out at the end of their employment with us.
Sure. It does strike me that ability to do the early withdrawal of funds is probably a really key advantage of this model for a lot of those types of employees. So I think that should be called out.
Maybe one last send off that I think you alluded to, but noticing that there's a withdrawal charge percentage depending on the year, how long the policy year is. So that's like the individual personnel policy, I'm assuming there. So year one would be for the individual, not for the policy, the length of the policy. And there's a charge related to withdrawing that. Do you think there would be any flexibility now that they've potentially upped the interest rate to cut that withdrawal charge, given that most of these, I'm assuming, are fairly short and small in number being withdrawal?
So I can certainly ask them if they're willing to do that. There's no withdrawal charge if the employee removes it. It's only if the city would transfer the funds somewhere else. That's where that withdrawal fee would come into play.
Okay, that makes more sense given the language here. Thank you.
Can the employee leave it in there for 20 years? Do they have to take it out?
Yeah, no, they could leave it in there for 20 years
So
if
they
they
could
want.
kind of treat it as a little retirement fund in addition to Social Security with whatever employment they have in the rest of their working career, which would be smart for some of them to do, but so it's nice to know there's an option. And at least we're not going to get any lower than what we already have at 1%. The floor will always be 1%.
Correct.
At least it's a little bit more. And I think even standard savings accounts and credit unions and banks aren't paying much more than that either on small.
Yeah, and again, it depends on how much you have.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a lot of money and you can put it into a bank money market account and you meet their balance requirements, you can get better. But if you've got $1,000 in a savings account, you're not going to get those rates just because the cost to service your account is enough that that eats up a lot of your potential earnings that you could have.
So it sounds pretty comparable to just putting money in the bank anyway. Any other questions or comments? Alder Morrow.
Alder Sean Morrow, District 11. I think something that is not, I think something that's not clear is that most of these part-time employees are part-time employees. They're not working 40 hours a week. I mean, no lifeguard is working 40 hours a week. Most that I'm aware of, because the pool's not open that much. And a lot of the groundskeepers and so on, they're working 35 hours. So a lot of this, I don't think is really going to matter from the part-time employees that I'm aware of. The ones that are like C's, like they're seasonal employees, like people who are working at the sled hill, the ski hill, or something. They're not doing that 40 hours a week, so they're not going to be putting money in to any type of a retirement account anyway. They'll do like Social Security and like other things, but not like, they're not going to put things into a retirement account and so on. I might be wrong on that, but from what I'm aware of, that those employees, like no one at the pool or at the sled hill is putting money into a retirement account. Is that correct, Corey?
Well, so we have a voluntary 457 plan, which works similar to a 401k for our full-time employees, and I can say that I'm at least not aware of any of our seasonal employees participating in that plan. So our seasonal employees do, they're mandated to participate in the FICA alternative plan, where 7.5% of their wages go pre-tax into the retirement account for them. But I don't think anyone does anything above and beyond what they're required to put in through this program. I'm at least not aware of any. I don't know if
I'm not aware of any.
I did. So I think, okay, thank you.
I'm Todd Ernst to the City Forester. From the employees that I hire, when we talk about the retirement stuff, all of them want to know, the vast majority just want to know how they can get the money out of there. They're just looking for that because they're just putting, I was trying to do the math in my head and I can't, but it's 3 months, 40 hours a week, and they're done. They want as much money as they can get. They want to know how they can get that money out of there, and they're just happy that they can get it out of there. And like, we had talked about, it's out of the 35 highest years, I mean, they got a long time to go, so it's the least. They're not even thinking of that. Not that that's good or bad, but that's just the way that it is. So I see it as a benefit.
I just saw a story about side hustles, people doing side hustles, and I kind of think about that as a crossing guard job for somebody who's retired. It just gives them a little extra money on the side, but it's not the main source of income.
Probably depends on the individual.
It does. For someone who's mowing lawns for the park department or a lifeguard, that's pretty good commitment for the summer. Crossing guard for the school year, that's a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon. So again, it's a little source of a little extra income for folks, but not necessarily their main source. Especially if you're retired, helps beef up your Social Security payment. Anybody else? Okay, I think the motion is to approve, correct? So we'll call the vote. Those in favor would vote aye. Aye. Opposed would be no. Motion carries. And the last item on the agenda, Director Kivela requests for an overlap on the building inspector position.
Good evening. I'll keep it short, as there is a memo in your packet. Our current building inspector, Maina Christensen, who has really left a legacy on our community, is retiring in the coming months, January 5th to be exact. She has graciously, I can't say the word, generously, there we go, new one, given us enough time to work through the hiring process for her position. And that would include even a little time for overlap. So looking to come to this body today and hopefully council next week for approval on overlap for her position. In staff's opinion, in my opinion, it is a critical element to have in this hiring process. We have a lot of large commercial projects in the works and coming up that it would be really, really nice to pass on our current building inspector's institutional knowledge and really get the new individual up to speed so that we're hopefully not having any hiccups. So before you is a request for 3 weeks, up to 3 weeks. It obviously depends on the hiring process and how we go with that, but up to 3 weeks of overlap kind of as a part of that process. We would look to cover that overlap cost by funding it with the vacancy we had in our front office for, I forget, 57 days, almost 2 months. So that would offset the cost, and it would be a zero.
Questions or a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Broderick and a second by Steinmetz. Questions for the director from the audience? Anyone online? I think this is a great idea. To be able to work with somebody who's been doing this for a long time and knows the people and knows the system, that's priceless. So with no other comments, we'll call the vote. Those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed would be no. Hearing none, motion carries, and we are adjourned at 6:40.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.